Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Subscription Box Basics, the podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ball. It's been so fun getting back into the swing of things after taking some downtime over the summer. And if you haven't listened to the last episode, stop this episode now and go back and listen to the first one because today's episode is the second episode where I'm talking about selling my subscription box business. Yeah, if you haven't heard, I sold Sparkle Hustle Grow. We closed on August 1st. And last episode, I told you my story of why. Why was I going to sell my subscription box business? So go listen to that one if you haven't already. Today, we're going to talk about how I sold my subscription box business. I got a lot of questions after telling people that we sold, like, where do you even begin? What does that journey look like? So I thought I'd take a little bit of time today and talk to you about that. I'm going to try my best to go in a sequential timeline, but I know I'm going to be jumping around a little bit here and there. And so let's just dive right in. As I mentioned in the last episode, I talked about why. And long story short, I was ready for my next season. My family was ready for our next season. And we didn't quite know exactly what that looked like earlier this year in 2022. And so I was trying to figure out like what are my next steps. And had been thinking about selling the business for about a year or so and just started doing some research, but it didn't hit me until March when I was ready to release my new podcast called A Better Way to Hustle. You should go check that one out too if you haven't already. It was a 12 episode season about finding a better way to hustle, figuring out what does success mean to you? What does it look like to you? Not to hustle alone and why things feel so hard. And it was so therapeutic for me. And after I finished recording that podcast, I thought to myself, okay, I really need to learn more about what it's like to sell your business. And I'd recently been introduced to Christine from the Magnolia Firm, and she ultimately helped me sell my business in what felt like record time. Legit, guys, like 94 days on the market. That was crazy. Can you imagine right now saying, okay, I'm ready to sell my business, and 94 days from now, there be a new business owner and a nice little deposit in your bank account? Yeah, 94 days. It's hard to imagine. So anyhow, it all started when I met her. That's where I'm going to start this story. And she offers a consult. So I, of course, booked a call with her so I could get on the phone. Actually, it was a Zoom call and just talk through it. What does it mean to sell your business? How does it work? What can you tell me? How can I prepare for it? And I loved meeting Christine. She was so warm and friendly and very excited and supportive of me selling my business, which was really important for me at the time because I felt worry and guilt and anxiousness, all these negative emotions around selling my business, selling this thing that I had grown from scratch from a side hustle 6 years ago. She was really supportive and that was helpful. And one of the questions that she asked me was, are you emotionally ready to sell your business? I was so happy she asked me that question because for the first time, I said it out loud to someone other than my husband or my daughter. And it was very pivotal when she asked that because I could finally say, yes, I'm ready to sell my business. And so the conversation went on from there and we just got to know each other a little bit. I told her a little bit about the business and she told me a little bit about what to expect. One of the things that she made clear to me was this is the very last few miles of a marathon, and you're going to sprint to the end. And she only takes on clients that are willing to see this through to the end. For example, some people might say, okay, I'm going to sell my business. I'm just going to sit back and just sell it as is. No, she wants you to commit to seeing it through to the finish line where you're going to continuously try to grow it, try to, at the very least, maintain it and cause no reason for concern with your subscribers because we're not going to talk about it. This is going to be a private behind the scenes type thing. So we talked a little bit about that. And so this, are you emotionally ready to sell your business? And then she's also, are you ready to sell your business now? Or when did you have in mind? Because they only take on so many clients at a certain time because they have to make space to be able to show up for them, do all the work that's involved. And she says, if we list your business, are you ready to sell if you get the right offer right away? And that caught me off guard because I had come to her saying, I'd like to have the business sold by the end of the year. And she's, no, no, time kills all deals. If you want to sell by the end of the year, then we're going to wait till later in the year to list it. If you're ready to sell now, let's list it. I, at that point, knew I was going to hire her, but I also wanted to play it safe and dip my toe in the water. So the first step that I took with her was I hired her and her firm, the Magnolia firm, to do a broker opinion of value. You've probably also heard it as a valuation. And essentially, to do this, she's going to gather all kinds of information. She made it super simple. She had a questionnaire, and I just had to fill out that questionnaire. I signed a contract with her to do this for me. And so that was like our first step. And I want to read some of the questions that were on the questionnaire just so you have a feel for what you will have to come to the table and be ready to talk about. Talking about your business structure, why and when you started the business, details about the business. What is it? What do you do? How do you earn revenue? What are your profit margins? Some basic financials, things like what are your operational expenses, things that you should be tracking already in a P&L. So maybe you're doing this through QuickBooks Online, or maybe you're doing this on a basic spreadsheet. Either way, as long as the information is accurate. The questionnaire is going to ask you about like your ideal buyer. What does that look like? And why are you selling your business? Having that information is super helpful for her to understand where you're at. The question asks about some basic things like software. Who is your competition? What kind of team do you have? And will that team be moving on when you sell the business? And then finally, it asks me about opportunities for growth. And so that was really fun. You might not think of that as like something that you would think about when you're trying to sell your business. But for me, it got me to thinking about, okay, if there were no restrictions, like if I had an unlimited budget, unlimited time, what would I do with this business? And that's where I came up with my opportunities for growth. So again, for me, that was fun. So that was the first step that I took with Christine, is that broker opinion of value. And the reason I did that too is I wanted to know what my business was worth. So often we forget the amazing things that we are building. And for someone like a third party to come in and say, look at all these assets, look at the P&L, look at all these things, it is so eye-opening. And it made me feel so good about my business too, because I had lost a little bit of that spark, that interest in running the business. I was feeling spread thin. I needed more time to spend with my family. I wanted to double down on my coaching. So it just gave me this renewed energy and spark and pride about what I have built. So I know you want to know, how do you figure out what your business is worth? One, that's what I hired them to do. But there are some things that I can share with you that will have an impact on the valuation of your business. So the general formula that most business brokers will use, and if I haven't explained this already, a business broker is just like, they're that person, kind of like a real estate agent, where they represent you. They try to get you a favorable price. They make sure you submit all the right paperwork. They're also known as a business intermediary. That's what Christine's role is. And sorry, I should have covered that earlier, but the general formula that most business brokers are probably going to use is listing your business for 2 to 3 times your annual profit. And that is a very basic That's a very basic formula. So say you're making $1,000 per month. And so multiply that by 12 to get your annual profit, and that's $12,000. 2 to 3 times that would be, you could list your business for $24,000 to $36,000. That's a super basic formula, and that's a very super basic example. But what a broker is also going to look at is reputation. What do your reviews look like online? What they're going to look at comps, just like a real estate agent would. Like, what are some other businesses that have recently sold that are comparable to what you're trying to sell, and what did they sell for? They're going to look at the domain value. I didn't know this, but GoDaddy has a domain appraisal tool that you can drop your domain in there and it'll tell you what it's worth on the market if you were just to sell that domain, for example. They're going to look at, your broker's going to look at social media. They're going to look at other things like trademark. You might not be able to put like a value to the trademark. It does show a level of professionalism. And so all of these things together create this broker's opinion of value. And when I got back my numbers, I was happy with them. I definitely saw them as, okay, I would definitely sell my business for that amount. And so at that point, I was feeling really excited. So after getting my broker opinion of value back, I was really happy with the numbers. And I talked to my husband about it, and he was all in. He's like, let's do this. So we went into contract with Christine at the Magnolia firm, and every transaction is going to be different. Every contract could be different based off of lots of different things. But a typical business broker is going to charge you probably about 10 to 15% for commission. So think about like how you pay a real estate, they get a commission off the sale of the business. You can look at it as a success fee. So they get that money, that percentage, when they successfully sell the business. So think about 10 to 15% of that business sale is going to go back to the broker. And that's generally looking at businesses valued, sold at $1 million or less. If it's over $1 million, then you probably can negotiate that percentage down. Just in when you're buying 100 books versus 50 books for your subscription box, you can negotiate that scale based off of the quantities. You're looking at about 10 to 15% commission. And so for the Magnolia firm and the contract that we got in with them, we had to put down and I thought this was super smart. So some brokers will have just a percentage that they're going to get at closing. Some of them will have maybe a flat fee, and then some of them will have something like a retainer. And so what I loved about this retainer, and I really appreciated it as a business owner, is I replenished the retainer at the first of each month for the Magnolia firm. So they always had this rolling amount of money that was coming in from me as the business owner. And you're probably thinking like, why would you give them money before they sold the business? I just think it's a really good business practice that they have set up, so that what happens if I change my mind and I'm like, I decided not to sell the business? Then they've done all this work and they've got nothing to show for it. Or some other life circumstance may change. Maybe my daughter would be like, you know what? I think this is something that I want to get involved in. Mom, I want you to keep this business for the next couple of years so that I can learn from it. And I'd like to take over it someday. Anything can change. And so I think Christine is super smart in that she asked me for a retainer. That way she'd get paid for her time and she could pay her staff while we were doing the work. Now, this is what's cool. And I can't guarantee, obviously, that this is how your contract would work or other business brokers work. This is just, I'm sharing my journey, my story. Any of the money that they used from the retainer throughout the 94 days on market then got applied to what I owed them as commission at the sale of the business. So this was making sure that they got paid along the way, but that I was already starting to pay into what I would owe them. And it made the blow a little less jarring whenever we closed the business and I had to pay their commission. I think it was a really smart way for them to set that up. She had to walk through it with me because this was new to me. I didn't understand how this worked. But what they did was then sent me weekly updates. Throughout all that time, they would share a time stamped invoice that told me who worked on what and how much they worked on that. And that would those hours then would dip into the retainer that I was paying them. They gave me these weekly updates with the invoice, but they also gave me weekly updates with the listings. So that's like the next stage here, the next step that we took after doing the contract. Her team got to work and her team was amazing. They prepared the business listing, which they list on Biz Buy Sell. They built it beautifully. Like they wrote the copy of the listing in a way that was made to like magnetically attract the right buyers. And the people who weren't cut out for this business, they would read it and they'd be like, that's not for me. And if the people that were really like our ideal buyers, they would read that and they'd be like, oh, I have to talk to them. And so they did an amazing job. They prepared a pitch deck so that they could share that with potential buyers. They got all this stuff ready and they helped me prepare things in the back end, the financials, and pulling together information about team duties, SOPs, all that good stuff. So many things that I could figure it out if I had done it DIY in a very scrappy way. But in this way, I felt very supported in my journey. And so the next step was going live. We went live with the listing. That was super exciting, super scary. The listing did not have the word Sparkle Hustle Grow on it. If you knew the industry, you probably could figure out that it was Sparkle Hustle Grow, but it didn't say that anywhere on there. And so any inquiries that came in on the business listing went directly to Christine's team. They would vet that potential buyer before they brought them to me, which was, guys, this saved so much time, so much headache. And essentially, they had all these conversations that I was either not equipped to have or didn't want to have. I'm talking about questions about financials and pricing and do you have the funding and stuff like that. That's why I hired a business broker, to have all those awkward conversations that I didn't feel equipped to have. And so the listing, say someone submitted that they had interest. Christine's team then would make them sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, before they would share any of the information about the business. And that was just an extra level of protection. And so then they would get those people on the phone or a Zoom call. They would share the pitch deck. They would get to know them, get to know the potential buyer, because Christine told me that I don't have to just sell to anyone. She's like, you have 100% say so in who you're going to sell to. So if you don't feel good about selling to someone, you can decline an offer if you want, or you can decline a pitch call. So she and her team vetted everyone before they got to me. So that meant that she wasn't going to bring any tire kickers to me. She wasn't going to bring anyone to the table that was going to waste my time, because my time is very valuable as the subscription box CEO. Not only am I still running the business, I'm still trying to grow the business, and I'm still running my boot camp, my subscription box coaching business, and trying to be a mom and a wife and all the things. So you can see how spread thin I was. Back to the vetting process. So they would have these conversations with them, and then they would schedule a pitch call with me. And Christine always jumped on the Zoom calls to facilitate them so that she would be in charge and like almost like air traffic control. But I was familiar with pitching my business, so it was easy for me. But essentially, all I had to do was tell a little bit about the business, why I was selling, what does my ideal buyer look like. And it was also a way for me to get to know the potential buyer so that I could feel it out. We could get an idea of, why are you looking to buy a business and what are your plans for it, that type of thing. And so those Zoom calls lasted about an hour. It was really good practice. I actually enjoyed them. And I think I did about 10 of them all in all, but they got me excited about talking about my business. And each one that I did, I got better and better. There are definitely a handful that I just was like, they're not going to buy. I just knew it. You just kind of knew that there wasn't that synergy. And then there was a handful that was like, oh, I could totally see that person or that couple buying the business. And I will share that the people that ultimately bought the business, it was a couple, a young family, similar situation to how we ran Sparkle Hustle Grow, husband and wife team, and fulfilling from their own home. When I got on my first Zoom call with them, it was unbelievable, the serendipitous moments that happened. Them sharing their story and me sharing mine, there was just so much overlap. I just immediately felt good about them. And I was just praying that they were the right fit, that they were seriously interested, and that they would ultimately become the buyers. And they did. And I am so grateful for that. So let's back up still though. So we're going through these pitch calls, right? And then the next step that we did was we had a deadline for a letter of intent. And a letter of intent is just that. This is the document before you get to the purchase agreement, because purchase agreements can take a while to put together. They can be lengthy. There's other things that have to happen. But the letter of intent is essentially saying, we intend to put in a full offer. This is like our placeholder for now. And so we got our letter of intent, and the people who were interested took part in that. And then we move into actually getting an offer. And that's like when it felt really real. That's the moment where I was like, okay, we're doing this. This is really happening. That was an interesting mental place to be, because it's part excitement, part nerves, part like, holy crap, I've got a lot of work to do before this business sells. And just Have you ever gone into something? Of course you have. You're an entrepreneur with the fear of the unknown. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That was the moment I was in. I had this little bit of fear that I was like, okay, what do I not know? But luckily, I had Christine and her team. They were just so awesome, giving me the weekly updates, giving me constant communication about what's happening, what to expect, and also cheering me on. And I am the cheerleader typically, and even the cheerleader needs a cheerleader. And that was really great to have them. We got our letter of intent on June 17th and decided on a closing date of August 1st. We accepted the letter of intent and then we got the offer. The offer from the new owners, we were just so happy. And one of the cool things, oh, I forgot to mention this. So with the letter of intent, I love this because this is if you get like multiple offers, this can help you decide, like it can be the deciding factor on who you choose. So with letter of intent, we also asked for buyer profiles. And the buyer profile was just a document that shared a message to the seller from the buyer, like, why do I want to buy your business? What is a very vague look at like your business plan? Like, where do you see this going? Where do you want to take this? Also, proof of funds. And those few things made it really clear on who our buyers were going to be and who we wanted to ultimately buy the business. And so we get past the letter of intent, the buyer profile, we get the offer that we want, and we got a full price offer, which I'm so grateful for. I know that it's worth it, but that's just one of those things where it's waiting and hoping that other people see the value in it. And the numbers speak for themselves, the revenue numbers and the opportunities for growth. It's still a little bit scary. I'm not going to lie about that. There's just a lot of unknown, and finally getting that offer with the number that you were hoping for, the number that you were praying for, finally was able to take like a deep sigh of relief. But the work was not done. And for the sake of trying to wrap this up here in the next like 10 minutes, I will share that the next stage after getting the offer is called due diligence. You've probably heard of this before if you ever have been a homeowner. Due diligence is that period of time where you dive deeper into the financials, the operations, the business structure, all the things to make sure it's legit, to make sure that the numbers are accurate, that they like actually are what you had submitted previously. And that means that you share your QuickBooks. Guys, that felt so vulnerable. I basically gave access to my QuickBooks to the buyer's accountant so they could just dive in. And it's one of those vulnerable moments where you're like, oh, I hope they don't judge me for my Starbucks habit. Oh, I hope they don't think that I was making bad decisions with my purchasing. And all of that to be said, I shouldn't have been so nervous. I ran a good business. Did I make mistakes? Yeah, I'm human. But it was so scary. That was one of my most stressful moments was sharing my QuickBooks with another accountant. During that time, I was also putting together documents as part of due diligence. I had basically like a checklist that said, okay, they need the last 3 years of bank statements, last 3 years of your taxes. They need access to your QuickBooks, information about the operations. What are the duties of each team member? How much time are you spending in that? We had to list information about our trademark, anything to do with IT, like our software stack. So we created a spreadsheet that had our software stack. And this was really helpful to have all that stuff too, because in the end, when it was time to sell the business and hand over ownership, all of that stuff was already ready. We essentially, in all of our software, changed the password to one like master password so that we could hand off everything. That way, Renee on my team, she and I could assist them with the transfer of ownership or helping them behind the scenes in any software. And when the new owners were ready to be on their own, they could change the password. It just made it so much easier. One of the lessons learned through the whole due diligence process is I feel like I did more work than I needed to when it comes to running the subscription box business. I'm always talking about simplifying, yes. But when I look back at the last 3 years, I saw so many things that weren't necessary. Like I could have really pared down and run the business much more leaner. But I think the reason why I did that is because I can get bored easily and new projects give me life. And same thing with Renee. And so I think that every 6 months or so, we would start some sort of new project and it would give us new life and excitement around it. In hindsight, that if that's what I need to stay excited, then great. But I could have easily pared down the business and really run it more lean and more streamlined and simpler. So, that being said, I encourage you to look at your business. Are there things that you're doing that are not necessary, that don't really have an impact on the revenue or don't really have an impact on the customer experience? What can you take off your plate to make your life easier and make your business simpler? Back to due diligence. That was the hardest probably 2 weeks of the whole setup. Like these were things that I should have had Google folders. One of the things that we had SOPs, standard operating procedures. These are basically like step-by-step guides of every process that we do in the business. We had those done years ago, but I had moved my warehouse from a third party warehouse back to my own home. And I never updated those SOPs to reflect that because I was too busy. And I was like, oh, I'm doing it. I don't need to show anybody else how to do it because we're doing it. We're doing the shipping, we're doing the packing. And so I did have to create a bunch of stuff like that from scratch, but that's okay. It was really a really good experience. And I am so much more well equipped to help you do the same. I learned so much about myself and so much about the back end of the business and selling the business. And I'm so excited about having all of that information and experience now that not a lot of coaches or subscription box coaches have that experience that I'll be able to bring to the table. And so I'm really thrilled about that. Okay, when during this time, and I forgot to mention this, during this time of due diligence, when we got the offer, the new buyers also put down an earnest deposit. So that's like a security deposit. That's basically a sum of money in a third party account. With real estate, I think they call it escrow. I'm not sure if that's what they call it in business selling, but it's essentially to demonstrate that you're serious about this transaction. It puts a little skin in the game. That's the thing that I can think of. It tells people that you're serious. Here's money we're putting down to show you that one, we have some proof of funds, but two, and access to those funds, but two, that we're serious about this. That's sitting in a third party account. Let's move forward to closing. So we closed on August 1st, and it was, I'll be honest, there was a lot leading up to it. There was a lot of work. There was just a lot of excitement, but a lot of stress. It is what it is. Like, this is a big business transaction. We sold the business for multiple six figures. So this was not just a quick little PayPal or Venmo transfer. They were going to wire transfer the money. We had a 30 plus page purchase agreement. The purchase agreement, I did have my attorney, Jamie Lieberman from Hashtag Legal. Her and her team reviewed that purchase agreement on my behalf, and the buyers had their own attorney. So we would go back and forth a couple times to like tweak things. Want to make sure everything was black and white, no gray areas. And as we were going through the process, new things came up. So for example, inventory. The purchase agreement did not include any amount of inventory. Instead, we had it as a different part of the purchase agreement. So it was like Schedule 1.4 or something like that. And so we had to make an Excel spreadsheet of all the inventory, how many we had of each one, the retail value, the wholesale value, and then we sold each item for the wholesale value. We were lucky enough that our new buyers decided to come out to our warehouse on packing week and get their hands dirty and learn with us so we could train them in person. And we just wanted to get to know them too. And it was really fun getting to know them. We did some videos while they were here, some pictures while we were here that we're going to ultimately use for the announcements. And that was great because we didn't want our subscribers to think that we did not care and it was just like, we're done. We wanted to make sure our subscribers knew that we took a lot of time finding the right buyers, the people who are going to take care of them in the future and fulfill this mission for them and continue to run this business in a way that serves them. And so they came to visit here. They did inventory counts with us, which was great. So we had that as a separate part of the purchase agreement. And then as a subscription box owner, you probably have prepaids. So for example, if someone buys an annual subscription, maybe you're on month 3 of a 12-month and you may have received all the money up front from that. So we had to do another schedule. It was like schedule 1.6, I don't remember, that listed how many prepaids and the value of each of those. And the buyers got that as a credit because I've already received the revenue from that, but they're going to have to fulfill that product in the future. In the end, it was really interesting because the amount that we had for prepaids almost was equal to the amount of inventory the new buyers bought. So you could see like they almost canceled each other out. It was pretty crazy to think about how that worked. But that was part of the purchase agreement. And we listed those prepaid, we listed the inventory. It was, like I said, a 30+ page document. So this is not something that you want to DIY. This is definitely something that you want to have reviewed by a professional so that, again, there's no gray areas, that it is black and white and everyone is getting fairly represented. And I feel confident in that. And I love Jamie and her team from #Legal. Highly recommend them. I'll put their link in the show notes. So here we are at closing. And we actually signed the document the night before closing. And we intentionally made August 1st as the transfer of ownership because we wanted it to be clean in the books. Like starting the new ownership on the first of the month just made it super clean and easy to see like a start and an end date essentially. But we did not publicly announce it till August 17th. And you might be wondering why on August 1st we wouldn't shout it from the rooftops. August boxes were already arriving in our subscribers' hands at the beginning of August. We couldn't announce it just yet because there were too many moving parts. We wanted to focus on getting people excited about getting their boxes, announcing the next month's guest expert and the next spoiler alert. And behind the scenes for those first 2 weeks, we did training. We did the transfer of ownership. We did switching all of the software to them, training them behind the scenes. This allowed them some time to watch all of the Loom videos. We did most of our SOPs as screencasts using Loom, loom.com. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. That way we didn't have to type out everything. We could just show them right on the screen how to do this. Like, here's how to ship a label or to batch your shipping labels. Here's how to change the renewal date on a customer's account, things like that. And so those first 2 weeks, we used that time to do training and stuff behind the scenes. And super, super strategically, we wanted their first renewal date to be before the announcement. That way, our new buyers would feel supported in that first renewal. There wouldn't be any concern or people jumping ship because, oh, Julie's leaving, like, I'm out, this is a good time for us to leave. No, we did not want that. We wanted the opportunity to have a great renewal and then have their full attention in sharing the exciting news about passing the baton to the new family. We did a little video together, we did a reel together, and we made an announcement, and we did an email as well. So we communicated it in 4 different ways to make sure people weren't going to miss it. And I'm not going to lie, it was a little scary. I was afraid that people were going to be disappointed. I was afraid people were going to say, oh, I'm leaving. But I also had confidence in our subscribers because they're amazing people and super supportive. So I had these conflicting emotions. And I know the new buyers were a little nervous as well, but we made the announcement and I was so excited about the response. I felt so loved on, not only feeling appreciated for having run this for 6 years and making such an impact on these women's lives, but the warm welcome they gave to Carol, the new owner, the new face of Sparkle Hustle Grow. And I was just relieved and excited and I felt loved on. And it was just such a good experience. But I think the lesson here is how intentional we were about the announcement. We wanted to make sure that they knew why I was selling. I wanted them to meet the new owner, get to know her and her husband, to know that this was someone I felt good about passing the business to, and that I was cheering them on, fully supporting this. So that was the story of how I sold my business. This one went a little longer than I normally go. I hope it was interesting to you. Those were some of the most emotional 94 days of my life. I was, like I said, emotionally ready to sell the business, but I don't feel like I was necessarily equipped and prepared for all the documents and all of the things that were out of my comfort zone, like QuickBooks. I have an accountant that does my books for me, and so I don't spend a lot of time in there. I'm going to get to know it a little better now so I can be more helpful to you when it comes to accounting and QuickBooks. But those 94 days were exciting and they were scary and they were hard. And I'm super grateful for having the support of my broker and my family, as well as some of my closest friends and colleagues that I had shared it with. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders because we were ready for our next season. I love subscription boxes and the subscription box business model, and it has definitely changed the trajectory of my life. Never did I think about an exit strategy, and it found me. And I am so excited to be sharing all of this information with you. The plan here now is to focus on my family and double down on subscription box coaching. Renee is going to be joining me for a lot of the new programs that we're going to be launching. I can't wait to share all that stuff with you, but I can't share it just yet. Over the next few weeks, we're working on doing some rebranding, putting together a new website and some new programs. In the meantime, I'm going to be sharing more information about my journey, my story of selling the business. I'm going to interview Christine from the Magnolia Firm. You're going to love her. I'm going to be sharing some information about the subscription box planner, which was created by my friends Jessica Principe of All Girls Shave Club and Becky Hoy from Brave Crate. Cannot wait to have them on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. You definitely want to get your hands on the 2023 planner, and we are going to be dropping some hot bonuses if you purchase the planner with our link. Details on that very soon. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you, and I hope you're excited about what's to come for Subscription Box Basics. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.